Hello everybody and welcome to more Bandit Survivor, but just with a little bit less effort. And today, finally, it seems like it's been forever, we were talking about Survivor UK Week 2. Apologies for getting this out so late, I know I'm really pushing it. A lot of stuff happened. My Monday was completely busy, 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the night, and Tuesday wasn't much better. And if you haven't already seen, I have been on the podcast Sit Out Bench, which is a Survivor UK podcast with Joe and Matt, two fantastic people, and you best believe we had an absolute cracker of a time. It was insane, so much chaos. We talked about some Survivor UK, and there was just so many funny stories. So check that out if you do want to see more of me, and also two very cool people from the Midlands. But firstly, let's talk about my thoughts of week 2, and it was a bit weird. Episode 3 seemed very reminiscent to episode 1 in the fact that we didn't really get full resolution in the episode, in my opinion. It was very rushed. Only 40 minutes of it was actually dedicated to tribe life or the challenges, and considering there was also dilemmas that took up a lot of time, like the outposts, it meant that the 20 minutes that they put into tribal council and the vote off, it just seemed like a bit of a weird episode in terms of pacing. And then also episode 4, we didn't even get an elimination, which I've went on to say it's not the worst thing in the world that at least Joel told them before they voted that that was the twist. So, it's non-offensive as far as non-eliminations go, but again, I would much rather have eliminations every single round. But as I said, because there was no elimination, we are ranking 15 people. But before we get into that, we're actually going to talk about the one elimination from week 2, and that is Rach. And Rach was someone that was in the middle of my power rankings, and I do suspect that also in this week, we could also see someone potentially in the middle of my power rankings go, because again, Rach did have a decent bit of content. It seemed like they were set up to not necessarily be part of the core, because I even identified last week that it was this alliance of 4 plus Rach, but I really thought this alliance of 4 with a lot of gamers on the cast, particularly a Doug and a Ren, will at least try to keep her around for that one round and try and weaken the minorities power consisting of Pegleg, Hannah and Lee by taking one of them out, and then potentially swing to take out Rach the next round. But Rach just really fell victim to the keep the tribe strong mentality. And considering it was between her and Ashley, it just seemed like there was a lot more people that were willing to keep Ashley over her. And yeah, we'll be talking about that as the episode goes on. As a result, I'm going to be ranking the 15 remaining people. And at number 15, someone that I wasn't too high on last week and has actually dropped down a few places, and that is Rachel. And for me, Rachel has just got a very questionable ad, where they do have a decent amount of confessionals, to be fair, but none of them seem of any substance, where they're either talking about food or about very general things about the tribe. And the one confessional they got that was strategy related in episode 4, talking about trying to take Shai out and keep Leani, turned out to not even be true, where, as we see, they take out Leani. But there's a very small amount of personal content, again, one of the lowest on the confessional charts. I believe they literally got 2 confessionals by the time of episode 3, and my issue with Calaton as a whole, but really specific to her, is the fact that there's been no clear relationships outlined on the tribe. So I am worried about her. Now at number 14, someone that's in a similar boat to Rachel, but to get personal content this week, and that is Matthew. Now he does have a very good pre-season confessional, acknowledging the fact he's going to be the youngest on the cast, and will try to use that in his advantage. I do like that. The problem is that he's only had 2 episodes with content. Episode 1, again, the marooning, he didn't have content. And episode 3, there is very little content of substance. And also he's been displayed as a bit silly in the edit. As we were kind of talking about on the Sit Out Bench podcast, he's getting his quote-unquote dodo edit, where we have people like Joel even mocking him by giving him a piece of black pepper, and he does get his pre-season confessional, but it's after talking about Matthew's smelling of onions, which just seems like a really cringy and essentially the edit trying to make fun of him leading up to his pre-season confessional. And again, he was one of these people talking about keeping Leilani, the moral, over the strength in Shai, whereas that doesn't even transpire. So I am very worried for him on this tribe. So he ranks here at number 14. Now, someone that I guess technically has gotten a bit higher, but I'm still not very confident in their chances, and that's Hannah. Again, disappointing seeing Hannah's content, even though she does seem to be understanding that there is a all boys alliance and she is kind of waking up to it. She also does vote correctly this time by voting for Rach, but I mean, very little personal content. I mean, who really is Hannah? And I feel like also in the edit they're being established as essentially what Ren and Ashley are saying just an episode later, where everything that Hannah says in episode 4 is things that people have been saying in episode 3. And I also think they're being set up, at least edit-wise, to be the only person on this tribe without a number 1, where we see that Leigh and Pegleg are very close. They're part of the All Boys Alliance. We have Doug and Ren, that even Leigh identifies as close. And then we have Ashley and Christopher, which again, got a lot of setup. So I am worried about Hannah's mid to even long-term game, if she even makes that far, just due to the fact that I don't think there's anyone that's really going to go out and bat for her at the time being. And now number 12, someone that actually got voted out of this episode, and again, I don't feel too high about them. I know that there are people that are probably going to criticize me for this take, but at number 12 I do have Leilani. And to be fair, in comparison to the other 3 people that we just talked about, I feel like she has been, number 1, more consistently shown, and number 2, has a more consistent storyline setup. The problem is that the storyline has a few flaws. So, for example, we have Leilani really getting this content that's quite repetitive in episode 3 and 4, talking about being the weakest of the tribe, and then being very worried about their position. And then, of course, they get their pre-season confessional, which is pretty good, talking about being a strong, independent woman, about how even though the tribe is perceiving her as weak, she has her own strengths, which is good. The problem is that she's getting this pre-season confessional about being strong when they eliminate her because of weakness. So there's a bit of inconsistency there. She doesn't really fit into the Camelot tribe and is voted out in the non-elimination episode. It's been a topic of controversy as well, whether Leilani would have been the actual boot had it not been a non-elimination episode. And considering there was no scramble when Joel announced that there'd be a non-elimination episode, I do feel like more than likely Leilani was still going to be the boot, as if you're booting Shai, then you've got to have talks with people to make sure they're on the same wavelength, that you are keeping Shai for the tribe strength and instead sending Leilani to the other tribe to give them a weaker player. And on the topic of the other tribe, where she ends up getting voted onto, Lilina is a very worrying landing spot for her, where there's 3 massive things that are going against her. Number 1, the creation of this all-male alliance that has seemed very strong in the past 2 episodes. We have this factor of keep the tribe strong, a mentality that literally got her voted out of Camelot. And also we have the fact that on Lilina, pretty much anyone that's seen as an outsider or an outcast gets votes. I mean, we saw that Rach got votes twice in a row, and we saw that Ashley got votes twice in a row. So they're very capable of just keeping a consistent person on the bottom and eventually getting them out. And we even see that in the episode 5 preview, Leigh is very concerned about trusting them, and Christopher also says that he's not sure about her either. Even Leigh is trying to test her. So I am very worried for her. It could be a situation of last one in, first one out. But considering also the under the radar female alliance that is starting to build up, it could be something that they bring her in for a vote to try and take out a Leigh or a Pegleg. So that's why I still have her ranked above a few others. Now at number 11 on this list, someone that has severely went down in my estimations, and that is Shai. And I was really holding out on Shai kind of getting this rebound, where it just doesn't seem like it's happened anymore. I mean, like, the thing is, they get so much awkward content. Like, they got this content with Jess and the Toad, where Shai is just randomly staring at her. We have so much negativity about him, where it seems like even Matthew in episode 4 was considering throwing the challenge to get him out. We have Tanik talking badly about him. We have Jess identifying that she put the vote on him in episode 1 and so wants him out. We have people like a Rachel saying that she wants Shai out, that he's a negative presence around camp. He's really seen as this person that for some reason, again, we don't really get full context in the edit, but someone that's bringing down the tribe morale. And he is the only name left on the tribe that has previously been thrown out there. And as I said in week 1, one with these casts that have a little bit less game knowledge. If someone's seen as being in the voting pool, they typically don't want to introduce a new person. The one thing that's saving Shai, and the reason why I still have him a little bit higher than some other people that have considered him pretty damned by the edit, is that he weirdly gets these, potentially unintentional of course, ways to rebound in spite of being on the outs. Like for example in episode 2 we have him coming back from tribal council and identifying that he is a social pariah, that there is something that he's doing that is annoying his tribe, and says that he's going to try and keep it under the radar. And for that episode at least we don't get any negative Shai content beyond that, so I feel like that could be seen as a little bit of a positive. We also do see in episode 4 that Matthew wanted to go up against Lee in the challenge, and is very much set up that Shai should lose to Lee, and that it's more negative content for him. Matthew is right, he wanted to go up against Lee and Shai is going to throw it, only for Lee to actually get steamrolled by Shai, and Shai ending up getting the point for his team. So there is a potential growth edit for Shai. Again, the only problem is even if we are looking optimistically as this somehow being a growth edit, it would be a very weird one, mind you. Even if it is a growth edits typically don't lead to wins on Survivor. They typically lead to final 6 to final 4 boots as a person that's a big threat but isn't going to be taken to the end because they could very well win the game. So again, even in the best outcome, which I highly doubt anyway is happening, Shai still in my estimations doesn't make it to the end, so that's why they're here at number 11. Now number 10, someone that has gone up a bit in the list. I am very skeptical about them still, but we do have Lee, and Lee is someone that has kind of just exploded with strategic content. Again, he was a big character in episode 1 and 2, but he didn't really have the confessionals to back it up. He only had 3 confessionals, but now Lee is just a big personality in the edit. He's getting this mastermind edit, which is kind of confusing considering that he has voted incorrectly twice. Now, to be fair, in episode 3 he could have been trying to outplay an idol by splitting the vote between Rach and Ashley, but considering in the edit we didn't even get any talk about splitting on Rach and Ashley instead of an idol, I'm a little bit worried, because it's either they didn't do it for the idol or else they did and the edit didn't feel it's necessary to show it, both of which I don't think look very good for Lee. And also another thing that doesn't look well for Lee is that the edit is pretty much setting it up to be between him or Ashley. One's on one side, one's on the other side, and I do feel like, as we see without me covering Ashley thus far, that Ashley is going to come outside of that power struggle because she is getting a more heroic edit. On the topic of editing, I mean, Lee has just got such a negative edit. This isn't me trying to establish a boot list for anyone. This is me using both a combination of logic, which is like game positioning and strategy, plus also the edit to determine who I feel has the best chance to win the game. And you have to ask yourself, are they really for the reboot? Again, the first Survivor season we've seen in 20 years. Are they really going to give this negative of an edit to a winner? Where again, we've seen even in the likes of Survivor US or Australia, where they've actually toned down the negativity in people's edits to make them more presentable on the show. And it just feels like every opportunity the show is getting, they're showing him off to be a hypocrite or to be someone that's a little bit of an icky figure. We even have Lee talking about the all-male alliance, being fooled by Doug, who very clearly is not interested in going super deep with this all-male alliance. And we even get content from Doug directly undercutting Lee, talking about how the game isn't all about strength, kind of showing off Lee as having a one-dimensional mindset. But the reason why Lee has gone up in my power rankings is because he does actually directly undercut Ren, and he understands that they're probably hiding something. And I do think it is impressive, despite being on the bottom. And again, people like a Doug and a Ren that probably could have had the numbers to be able to perform some sort of peg leg or Hannah blindside. He actually is able to push his ideology onto the camp of needing to get out Rach or Ashley in terms of tribe strength, which is further impressive considering that we even have people like Peg Leg admitting that they aren't very good at the episode 3 challenge. So all in all, I feel like Lee has actually shown off a pretty good understanding of the game in this week. Obviously they're one of the most physical people on their tribe, and I feel like that helps him a bit reach a swap or a merge. But again, it's that social skill and also the fact that they are so negatively presented in the edit that makes me a bit worried for their future trajectory in the game. And now number 9, someone that again I Did have them originally at number 11, but then I swapped him and Shai and him and Lee around. And I've just ultimately understood that this person, even though I am a bit concerned about them, they've got a pretty decent edit. And at number 9, I do have Pegleg. Now, the issue with Pegleg and the reason why I was skeptical to put him higher on this list is because he does come off a bit as like Lee's right-hand man. Again, outside of his relationship with Lee, we don't really see the other relationships that Pegleg are forming. In fact, the only other person that we see him talking to is Doug, and Doug doesn't want to be any part of the idol search with him. He actually says that he doesn't want Pegleg to even know about the idol, which is worrying. But talking about that episode 4 part where they're looking for the idol, I think that Pegleg does show off a very impressive amount of game knowledge in his episode 4 confessional, where he, number 1, identifies the power of an idol, number 2, outlines why he's getting the idol and that he hopes to find it, and then number 3 also says that he is more than likely expecting an all-female alliance to form, which, as we see with the girls plus Ren at the well, that is a very likely possibility and something that he should be fearful of. So I think that that's good. And considering that this male group is something that Christopher seems pretty keen on keeping to, at least for now, and they do also have Doug that they could try to pull in, it is something that could provide him with safety. And really, I think that next week is going to be very important for Pegleg, where if he does manage to survive next week, I could see him actually getting quite far, as he is in a similar position to Lee, but I feel like, again, as I identified in week 1, he's a bit more of a likable figure. He's someone that's able to communicate with people a little bit better and isn't as antagonistic, but also he could be getting an edit set up where he's essentially set up to be a person that Lee loses, and then that drives his villain arc even more. So considering that really he could be all over the board in terms of a short-term, mid-term, or potentially even long-term game, and I have that skepticism, I put him here at number 9. Now at number 8, finally he's moved up on my list, mind you 1 spot, but we have Lawrence. And again, Lawrence got some pretty good content. Episode 1, he only got 1 confessional, and that was his pre-season confessional. Episode 2, he got no content. So he has gone from a person that had the smallest amount of confessionals to being a pretty pivotal part in the season. I mean, he's seen as the good guy in the Outpost dilemma. He gives information to key people like Christopher and Tanik about the dilemma, which I feel like is going to situate him quite well coming into the mid part of the game. And he is setting up his bonds very well on the Calaton tribe, where it just seems like everyone really loves Lawrence. I mean, every time he talks, people are smiling and laughing. We have Tanuki's confessional at the start of episode 3, so I think that's all good for him. My biggest thing is, I think a lot of his content can be argued as situational, where in episode 3 and even 4, really all we're shown about Lawrence is relating to the Outpost, where again we have the decision, and then we have him talking to Christopher about the fish, which can be more so argued as leaning into Christopher's upcoming arc. And then episode 4, it's really just him talking to Nuke about how there is an idol clue, meaning there's an idol at camp. He's also doubted by Jess for telling the truth, which we eventually know by episode 4 is something that she was rightfully concerned about, because he lied about there not being the second fish dilemma, as well as the fact that there were hidden immunity idol clues rather than a hidden immunity idol. And I'm not sure if he should have kept the knowledge about the idol to himself. I do understand that he wants to make inroads with Tanuki, but I feel like him having that knowledge that there's an idol back at camp, and him only knowing about it, could have provided himself with some power and could potentially set up Tanuki getting the idol over him. But again, he has got some pretty good content. He seems like a very social figure, and it'll be important to see next week if the content that he received from this week is situational or if it will extend beyond the Outpost dilemma. Now, number 7, I don't know what to do with this person, quite frankly, where, I mean, they're all over the place. It's Ashley, and yeah, Ashley is in a pretty bad spot right now. I mean, they're clearly on the bottom after the vote, and they're the only person left on the tribe with their name out there. That is not good. They also were forced to vote out their quote-unquote best friend in Rach, which wasn't hugely set up well in episode 3, so I'm not sure if that's the editors trying to shield her, or if they just don't really bother showing off her social connections. And I am worried it's that latter point, where Ashley is seen as someone that isn't as important to show off her social game or connections in the edit. But I mean, we do have some positives. I mean, we have her being the more positive counter-argument to Lee. We have her constantly proving Lee wrong by beating Leani, and he He loses to Shai. She gets a confessional talking about how the boys want all strength and yet she won the challenge. She even talks about some of the hypocrisy. She identifies that the boys are going to come together. So I think that's all good content as well. We have her talking about how Lee is after her, Ren and Hannah, and a group of 4 do vote alongside her in spite of the fact that she does receive a lot of votes. Again, it's that original group of 4 plus Hannah and then Lee, Pegleg and Rach that do end up voting for her. So I feel like that shows to some degree that that group of 4 can still see a resurgence. And I feel like it is a core group where, again, I always identified that it was that group of 4 plus Rach. That seems like quite a core group where you have Doug and Ren as one pair and Christopher and Ashley as the other. I just worry, even though that Ashley is being set up as the heroic counterpoint to Lee, will Lee drag her down before he really sees his demise? Or will it be a situation where she's able to cause his undoing? I personally believe in the latter. I feel like Ashley will get the better of Lee to some degree. It might not be necessarily blindsiding him, but it might be getting one over on him at a certain tribal council by taking out one of his allies. But I guess only time will tell. I do also think that she has got somewhat of a shield and someone lower on the totem pole in Leani from a pure objective standpoint. So I feel like she will have some sort of survivability potentially to a swap, and then she can reintegrate herself within a group. And now at number 6 and on. To be honest, 6 and on are people that both have good game positioning and also have the edit that I could see genuinely being a winner. This is like my top band of people right now that I could genuinely see winning the season from our episode 1 to episode 4 site. But at number 6, the person that I feel is least likely to win the game is Ren. And again, similar to Lawrence, I do question how much of their outpost content was circumstantial, where again, they just explode in the attic, getting 7 confessionals episode 3. It was actually the most confessionals ever on Survivor UK, the reboot. So go them. And also they identify that Lee will be coming for them and Ashley, so that's good. And even though they don't get the idol, they get the idol clue. Doug finds the hidden immunity idol and immediately tells Ren, with even content about them talking about seemingly sharing it. So that seems very good. And the fact that it's also a timed idol means that I feel like Doug is even further incentivized to play for Ren when the time comes. There are some issues with their edit though. That's why they're number 6 and have, even though they are pretty highly ranked, gone down on my estimations. I mean, both Christopher and Lee are skeptical about their involvement in the outpost. Christopher actually knows from Lawrence that they lied about the dilemma and could potentially blow everything up. Again, in episode 4 they didn't, so it might be information that Christopher is just sitting on, but I could see that being a storyline that's rehashed in episode 5. And finally, even they in their confessionals identified they could have played the outpost dilemma better, which is a little bit worrying that they decided to include that part of the confessional rather than them just saying, oh, I managed to get through that okay. So ultimately, even though they do have some big positives, there's also some very notable flaws with their edits, so they rank here at number 6. And number 5, someone that, again, a little bit worried about, but looking at it, I mean, with all the negative parts of people's edits and holes in them, I feel like this person actually stands out quite a bit. And number 5, I have Nathan, who has jumped up considerably in the power rankings. And again, Nathan continues to surprise me, where I thought Nathan was just going to be this physical figure and wasn't going to be too much more to him. But not only does he seem like a very strategic person and has very good understanding of the game. I mean, we even see in episode 3, he's explaining the sit-out rules. We also have him being a pretty social figure, where we do have him obviously set up being with Tanik. I feel like that's great. And in spite of the fact that he doesn't get that many confessionals about his outlook on the game, again, it's just very generic confessionals talking about the tribe, I think it is impressive that in episode 4 we do get a scene between him and Tanik talking about wanting Shai out. Again, everyone else on the tribe talked about getting Shai out, but Nathan is the only person to say he actually wants Leani out to keep the tribe strong. And seeing as that comes into fruition where Leilani gets voted out, I do feel like Nathan has a considerable amount of power on this tribe, and kind of shows that Nathan might be calling the shots between him him and Tanuki. The problem is, edit-wise, is that they're set up to be far less impactful of a figure right now compared to his duo partner in Tanuki, where again, Tanuki is getting a lot more 2 and 3 dimensional content. They're getting a lot more talk about their social game, their strategic game, and overall I feel like Nathan with his more generic content, even though it isn't necessarily bad, and the reason why he has gone up, even though again I feel like his content is less impressive than week 1, it is worrying the fact that we're not getting as much personal content about Nathan or really his outlook on the game. But now number 4, someone that again jumped up slightly on my list, mostly due to Ren going down, and that is Jess. And yes, it is a little bit worrying that Jess is having this much content, especially when they are one of the weaker members on a tribe all about strength. Although, to be fair, they did beat their opponent in the episode 4 challenge, so there is that. But also we do get content about them struggling with the elements, and I am starting to get a little bit worried that it could be too much. We could potentially see Jess succumbing to the elements or really getting beaten down by them. That's the only negative I have, but again, so many positives for her, and I really do love Jess as a player, very reminiscent to like a Shawnee. It's just the social game, and it really seems like she's focusing in on that. Again, she's like a Sims character. She's invested all her points in the social game, and she seems to be doing that super well. But again, we have constant content from her. She is very involved in Tribe's dichotomy. She is set up to be more than likely get the better of Shai, where we even get talk in episode 4 about how Shai did get a vote against them at the previous tribal council they attended, and Jess really wants them out, which further adds to why they want Shai out, rather than just this talk about keeping tribe morale, which a lot more contestants got, which I think is a bit more generic. We also have good content about the fact that Shai doesn't seem to know that she voted him at the first tribal council, so that's good. Seems well insulated with the likes of Tanuki and Lawrence. Lawrence is talking about getting the big fish and lying about the dilemma to a certain degree, and everyone is agreeing with him and patting him on the back. But Jess, I do like that they included the confessional of her being a little bit wary and saying, well, hang on, I'm not sure if Lawrence is telling us the full truth, which turns out to be true. So again, a little bit of a worry about Jess in the immediate future, but Jess is someone that I could see very likely, as we see this week, rising up in my power rankings once it starts to become a little bit less about strength on the tribe. So she ranks here at number 4. Now at number 3 on this list, again, this was literally a last minute change. So number 3, I do have Doug. And Doug has gone slightly down on my rankings, but again, make no mistake, it's the top 3 of 15 people. I still feel like he is set up very well in the edit, and now he is the first person in Survivor UK history to find an idol, and I think it's very impressive as well that he finds the idol without Pegleg even getting suspicious or noticing him. Again, the fact that he is able to pull off that idol heist is magnificent. He is also positioned very well and is essentially in the swing position with Christopher between this forming non-meal alliance and Pegleg plus Lee, again this meal alliance, so they do have a lot of agency in that aspect. We do also have him getting out Rach, which doesn't really have that much significance, but we did have a little bit of concern from Rach in episode 2 about if she can trust Doug, so it could be seen as a minor positive in the edit that Doug is getting out that potential adversarial person against him. He is set up as a massive physical asset by Lee, as well as Joel during the challenge. Again, he had 3 bags on his back, and he was pulling both Lee and Christopher in that sandbag challenge, which I think is pretty much setting up Doug to make the merge. I mean, you can't boot him. Like, maybe a swap he could get blindsided, but if there's no swap, then I don't see how they get rid of Doug with his game positioning and his physicality. We have him undercutting Lee about it just not being a physical game, and shows that he is seeing the game from a more fuller perspective rather than just this single perspective. The problem is if Rand's idol clue and his idol could sink him. Again, he has this very specific confessional, which I feel like they kind of included for a reason, where he says the idol must be kept between only us two, and if it can't be set between us two, then we're good. The problem is, Christopher knows the idol, guaranteed. He has been in talks with Lawrence after the challenge in episode 3, where Lawrence literally told him about the fish dilemma. So Christopher knows that Ren, to a certain degree, lied to him, and I'm sure he'll be asking the duo about their involvement, which does make me a little bit worried about Doug's future. But overall, apart from that, a very good edit. And now number 2, someone that, again, I just can't put this person any lower, and that's Tanik. And Tanik is absolutely fantastic in the show right now. She is really demonstrating some fantastic strategic ability and social ability, furthering herself from just this Nathan group where we have her talking to Lawrence. She is the only person now on the tribe that knows about the hidden immunity idol clue apart from Lawrence, and she seems to have a bigger drive to try and get it, so more than likely she's going to end up with the hidden immunity idol. And I think what's also very impressive is how well she is socially integrated within the tribe, as for example when Lawrence comes back and they tell the tribe about the outpost twist, Tanuki instantly says, I don't want to go on it, but I think we should pick Lawrence, to which the likes of Rachel and Matthew and a Jess are agreeing with her immediately that Lawrence should go. It's super impressive that, again, in 1 second she's able to flip the entire tribe and get Lawrence to go to the outpost. We have her in talks with the likes of Matthew and Rachel, talking about getting Shai out, and they feel comfortable telling her that. I think that's great. The only problem is that she loses Leani, who they said specifically they would keep in a perfect world in the confessional booth, showing that potentially Nathan might have more power, at least in that tribal council. So it is a little bit worrying that she got that content that she didn't need to get, that kind of undermines her. So again, a fantastic edit from Tanuki. I have no doubt they'll make a deep run in this game, but I am just slightly worried about that aspect of their game position. But now at number 1, I mean, come on, he's got to be number 1 again, and that is Christopher, who again has another fantastic week. And the only real negative with Christopher is that there's no negatives with him, where, again, it's kind of an ironic thing with a Survivor winner ranking like this, where if you don't have any negatives, that's a negative because you might be set up as too good in the edit. But again, just they are smashing it right now, and they have so many connections. I mean, Lee even says in a confessional, I have me, Peg Leg, Doug, and I'm sure I have Chris. They're well insulated within the boys group and the others. They even identify they're in the middle with their confessionals, and they manage to keep Ashley over Rach, which is fantastic for them, despite Lee seemingly wanting Ashley out. Is one of the people to not believe Ren fully with the fish, talks about it being fishy, then further learns from Lawrence information about the outpost dilemma, which could then also feed into a swap or a merge dynamic with Lawrence where they team up and work together. And again, it's just a fantastic way to be able to establish information from talking to Lawrence on the other tribe, so shout out to him. He's identified as a massive physical asset for their tribe, someone that is so important in the challenges, and he even gets a winner quote during his pre-season confessional, talking about how there's only one of me and there's only one winner. So with all that taken into consideration, I mean, I have to put Christopher here at number 1. There's no real flaws with his edit. He's someone that's set up so well. Nobody is saying anything negative about Christopher on the tribe. He's got relations with everybody. He has the most power in the game, in my opinion, knowing about the fact that Ren has at least an idol clue and more than likely knowledge about where the idol is. And again, he can side with the boys, he can side with the people that aren't the boys. He has so much power and so much agency, so as a result I put him here at number 1. But thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my rankings or if there's people that you would swap around. And I will be getting back to my reviews on the channel shortly with the episode 5 and 6 reviews once they come out on Saturday and Sunday respectively. Again, sorry, it's just been such a busy day for me, just trying to get everything out there and recorded. But thank you for watching this video. If you do want to see more content on my channel, I do play on this pretty cool lore called Chaotic Reality that you should definitely check out, potentially even sign up to if you want. But thank you all for watching this video. Peace!